Hey, Bastich B here for 64K and welcome to another episode of Top 10s.
Welcome to 64K, hosted by Bastich B.
And today's episode is going to be my top 10 versus fighting games for the Sega Saturn. So my criteria for this list is versus only games, and I'm talking about one-on-one versus, 2D or 3D, it doesn't really matter. I'm not talking about arena-based combat things like Virtual On, and I'm not talking about scrolling beat 'em ups like Three Dirty Dwarves. Those are kind of different genres to me. This is just strictly one-on-one versus
next battle.
Yeah, so in my opinion, the Sega Saturn, the Japanese Sega Saturn, has the best collection of versus fighting games on any system of all time. It's just a fact. You gotta deal with it. Okay, so a few quick notes about fighting games on the Sega Saturn. If you have a European machine or an NTSC North American machine, you're not going to be able to play a lot of the games on this list. You're going to need something like this, an ST key or an action replay cartridge. This basically nullifies the regions, so you can play games from any regions around the world. You're still going to run into a couple problems though. So on this list there's also a bunch of games that use a RAM card for the Saturn. This is the 4 meg RAM card. It comes in 2 meg and I believe there's a 1 meg one also. A lot of the big arcade conversions by Capcom and SNK require these. Now if you have the North American or European system, you're not going to be able to do this because you've already got the cartridge in there to convert it. Now there is a cartridge swap technique where you can put in the ST key and then load it up and then quickly pull this out and put this one in. I used to use this back in the day. It used to work all the time. I'm lucky I didn't destroy my Saturn doing that. It's kind of dodgy whether you should try it or not. I never had any issues. I played XMen vs Street Fighter for example a million times doing the swap technique and nothing ever happened. I'll do a video on this later in my how-to section. But it's up to you if you want to try that. And the final note before we get this list started, if you buy these games on eBay and you say you buy King of the Fighters 95 just loose like this, bear in mind that these things need their RAM cards to load. So without having this, if you just buy this on eBay like that, you still need this. Without this you can't play the game on any system. So just bear that in mind when you go looking for versus fighting games on the Saturn. And on that note, let's get this whole list started with number 10.
Number 10.
And to kick things off, we got WWF WrestleMania, the arcade game made by Midway and released on the Saturn in 1996. Whether you're a fan of wrestling or not, this is a fast-paced, satisfying fighting game that combines Mortal Kombat-style looks and gameplay with excellent use of sound and over-the-top humor. Lots of classic wrestlers are here, like Bret the Hitman Hart, The Undertaker, and Shawn Michaels. The game almost feels like NBA Jam in its relentless pace and pick-up-and-play gameplay, which is very easy to get into, but hard to master. A great fighting game that is quite different from anything else on this list.
Number 9.
And next we got a completely different beast in Fighting Vipers, developed by Sega's AM2 and released on the Saturn in 1996. This game never gets the attention it deserves, featuring a more faster-paced and more over-the-top action than its sister game, Virtua Fighter 2, featuring cage match-type brawls with an armor system for each character that can be broken off to increase further damage, as well as smashing characters through walls and fences, make this a more visually and intense game, with some great music and animation, and that excellent Virtua Fighter gameplay, only taken to the more awesome and insane level.
Number 8.
And at the number 8 slot we have Real Bout Fatal Fury Special, released by SNK in 1997 on the Saturn. The first SNK game on the list, and a great throwback to the roots of the Fatal Fury series. The two-level playing field is here. Sprites and animation are bold and colorful. Make sure you have the 1 meg RAM card, a massive roster of classic SNK characters from Mai, Terry, Andy, Billy Kane, all your faves, plus extras. Music and sound effects are meaty and get you in the fighting mood. This is also a much easier SNK game to get into. Good pick up and play action. The only downside here is the loading, which breaks up the pace. But I'm an old school 8-bit computer owner, so this doesn't really bother me. It's nowhere near as bad as the ridiculous Neo Geo CD versions, but if you're a modern gamer with little patience, this may not be your cup of tea. And next we have Vampire Savior, the Lord of Vampire, or Darkstalkers 3 in the West, which came out on the Saturn in 1998. This, in my opinion, is one of the best versions available on any console for this game. If you're not familiar with it, then think of it as a crazy gothic version of Street Fighter. Massively over-the-top characters like Sasquatch, Victor and Bushaman, among many others, make this a visual treat with awesome catchy music. Once you get used to the characters' bizarre movesets, this game becomes an absolute treat to play. My favorite wildcard game at number 7.
Number 6.
And at number 6 we got King of the Fighters 96, which was released in 1996 on the Saturn. And yes, I promise not to say 6 again anytime soon. It's almost impossible to do a versus game countdown without multiple SNK games somewhere, but this is my favorite for the system. It may not be to everybody's liking. Figuring out the characters and pulling off some of the moves takes a lot of practice, but it's highly rewarding once you get the hang of it. Characters from Fatal Fury, The Art of Fighting, and even Akari Warriors all make an appearance, making the roster bursting with variety. Those pesky load times do return, but nice colourful graphics, cool stages, and a thumping soundtrack always kept me coming back for more, over and over again.
Number 5.
And here is the second game by Sega's AM2 division, Virtua Fighter 2. This was released on the Saturn in 1995. This takes everything from Virtua Fighter and Virtua Fighter Remix and ramps it up with high-resolution graphics, more moves, and more characters. Extremely fast-paced matches where taking an enemy out by force or by ring outs is equally as satisfying. Akira, Pi, Sarah, and everyone else is back with 2 new additions, Leon and Shun. This game is all about quick combos and fast reaction times, and is a fantastic 3D fighting game, and a sequel that lives up to the hype.
So I just wanted to stop here for a second and mention Sega's AM2 division. That is the arcade division headed up by Yu Suzuki. This guy created countless classic games like Shenmue and Space Harrier and Outrun. Anyway, him and his team were responsible for Virtua Fighter, which is the first 3D fighting game on any system. It was released in the arcades, and a year later in 1994 they ported it to the Saturn. Now if you go back and look at any of the old 3D fighting games like the first Tekken or the first Dead or Alive, it's blatantly obvious that they were taking everything they knew from Virtua Fighter. Having said that, AM2 went on and created a bunch of other fantastic arcade games, and they were all ported to the Saturn. They're crazy madness that is fighting Vipers, and the crazy Battle Royale Saturn exclusive game Fighters Megamix was also made by them. I feel that they definitely defined the whole 3D fighting game genre right from the beginning. And on that note, let's continue the countdown.
Taking this spot is Marvel Superheroes by Capcom, and released on the Saturn in 1997. An excellent 2D fighting game featuring the crazy action that was established in Capcom's XMen Children of the Atom. Featuring a unique fighting mechanic that has random Infinity Stones appear on screen triggered by certain moves, and collecting these during the brawl has many boost effects like increasing speed, defense, or energy refill, amongst many others, that keeps the game fresh and unpredictable. Beautiful 2D graphics and animation, and on-point gameplay makes playing as Captain America or Spider-Man feel like this is how they should always have been represented in games. A must-play fighter at number 4.
Number 3.
Fighters Megamix was released in 1996 on the Saturn, and is basically Sega's answer to the King of the Fighters series in 3D. AM2 did the honors yet again and takes all the characters from Virtua Fighter and Fighting Vipers and mashes them all together in a battle royale. This features the best gameplay from both series, including the cage matches and the now open stages without ring-outs, which just opens up the gameplay massively. Putting these two styles of games together seems like it wouldn't work, but it actually works brilliantly. Coupled with the tons of unlockable characters from Virtual Cop to the car from Daytona, it gets super weird. A truly great fighter with good graphics and a thumping Sega arcade type soundtrack make it a worthy entry at number 3.
Number 2.
As a non-crossover Street Fighter game on the Saturn, Street Fighter Alpha 2 is my favorite. From the massive, well-animated and bold characters to the awesome sound effects and music, this is Street Fighter bliss to me. This takes everything that made the first game so brilliant and makes it better in every single way. Many new characters join the fray, including Final Fight's Rolento and Sakura, to name a few. The combo system and flow of the game works so well and is easily accessible to even newbies of the fighting genre. I could easily suggest playing either of the 3 alpha games on the Saturn, and you really should. But this is the one that I sunk so many hours into, learning all the nuances over the other 2, that it simply became my favorite Street Fighter game ever to this day. An epic game at number 2. And before I show you my number 1 pick, I just wanted to go through 6 honorable mentions. These games just didn't make the top 10. If this was a top 20, these things would easily have been in it. Anyway, so let's go through them very quick. Okay, so first up we got Last Bronx. This is a demented fighting game by Sega. It was a Saturn exclusive. You can think of it as Virtua Fighter with weapons. It's super fast paced. It's kind of like basically the Saturn's version of Soul Calibur. Okay, so next up is Groove on Fight. This is a crazy fighting game made by Atlas. Think of it as like kind of like Darkstalkers in the sense that the characters are over the top, the moves are crazy. This is definitely a game you want to search out and find. Okay, so the next game is Dead or Alive. This is a crazy game. If you play this, you'll definitely notice that this is a Virtua Fighter ripoff. There's no doubt about it. But it doesn't matter, it is still a really fun fighting game, well made and worth checking out. Okay, and next is All Japan Pro Wrestling featuring Virtua, and when it says featuring Virtua, it features 2 of the Virtua Fighter characters, Jeffrey and Wolf, the wrestling characters. This game I really struggled. I really wanted to have it in the top 10, but it's more of a wrestling simulation than a crazy mad fighting game, and it's definitely not going to be for everybody. I think it's one of the best wrestling games on the system. It's definitely worth playing. And next we have XMen Children of the Atom. I apologize, this is actually the arcade version I'm showing in the background here. I don't have the game anymore, unfortunately. I played the hell out of it back in the day. This is the first Capcom game that featured Marvel characters, and it's done excellently. It is crazy over the top. It's the basis for pretty much all their Marvel vs. Capcom crossover type games. So you definitely got to check this one out. It's well worth tracking down. And the final honorable mention here is called Cyberbots. It's also made by Capcom, based on an arcade game. It's excellent. You choose a character, you choose a mech of your choice, and you just go brawl the hell out of it. Excellent 2D graphics, excellent sound, gameplay is really easy to get into and enjoy. Well worth your time to search this one out. And with all those honorable mentions out of the way, let's get to our number 1.
And number 1 is...
And here it is, XMen vs. Street Fighter by Capcom, and released on the Saturn in 1997. My favorite fighting game on the system, whose versus software is overflowing with classics, left, right and center. In my opinion, this game is arcade perfect, from the insanely good 2D animation to the excellent sound effects and music. All the gameplay and madness of the X-Men and Marvel superheroes games is mashed into this mutant with more to boot. The character team-ups are sublime, with combos like Wolverine and Ryu, or maybe a little bit of Juggernaut and Zangief. Now I know what you're thinking. Why not choose the sequel, Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter, over this? The answer is that game could have been number 1, but I simply played this more and had more fun with it overall. And just like the Alpha series, I didn't want to put multiple games from the same series on the list. Otherwise, you know, this list could have easily just been a Capcom exclusive countdown. Overall though, this is an essential versus game you need to play on the Saturn above all else. And that's why it's my number 1. Okay, and that's it for another episode of Top 10. If you want to leave your comments
about this list. I know there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be like, why didn't you have this game? Why didn't you have that game? I'm basing everything off games I've actually played a lot, so I can say without any shadow of a doubt that these games are all worth your time, especially if you're a versus fighting game fan. These are all great games. I wish I could have put more games on this list, but I wanted to make a top 10, narrow it down, make it more concentrated. Otherwise I could have just put every game I like versus wise on this, and on the Saturn, and it would just be like a massive list of like 50 or something. Yeah, I hope you'll join me next time for another top 10 video. If you could like and subscribe, that would be greatly appreciated. And from me, Bastich B at 64K, cheers.